Let's talk about a paradox, a puzzle, really, that you see everywhere in the world of work, especially among high performers. It's all about time, effort, and what we actually get done.
I mean, you know exactly who I'm talking about, right? You've got one person whose calendar is just a wall of back-to-back meetings. They're firing off emails late into the night, but they seem to be running on a treadmill, going nowhere fast. And then you have the other person. They seem to have time to think. They have space in their day. And yet, they are the ones who are actually moving mountains. So what is going on here? What do they know that the busy person doesn't?
The usual answer to this is always productivity hacks. Get a better to-do list, wake up earlier, use this new app. But that's not it. That's just optimizing the engine on a car that's stuck in the mud. The real difference isn't about managing time better. It's about understanding the invisible physics of how work and value are actually created. There are these hidden forces that dictate who gets ahead and who just gets tired.
So, in this explainer, we're not going to give you a list of tips. Instead, we are going to decode those forces. We're going to map the signals that lie underneath all of it, the signals of focus, leverage, and real control. So let's start with the first one, which is maybe the most deceptive of them all.
All right, let's dive into our first signal. And this is a really counterintuitive idea, but it is so powerful. It's the idea that intense busyness, it's often just a form of hiding. It's this complex, seductive illusion of activity that we create for ourselves and for others to avoid doing something much, much harder.
So let's define our terms here, really precisely. Busyness is not a proxy for importance. It's a state of being so overloaded with tasks that you successfully avoid asking the one terrifyingly important question: what is the single most leveraged thing I could be doing right now? Busyness, then, is camouflage for a lack of real strategic impact.
And you can see this play out in the most basic tool we all use, the calendar. On one side, you have the busy calendar. It's reactive, it's jam-packed with tasks, and it's almost entirely controlled by other people's agendas. Then you have the valuable calendar. It's proactive, it has space, and it's filled with a few key, high-leverage activities that you control. One is just a record of your obligations. The other is a blueprint for making an impact.
So how does this camouflage actually work in our heads? Well, first, we overload ourselves with small, easy-to-define tasks because it lets us avoid the messy, ambiguous, difficult work of real strategic thinking. Answering emails just feels easier than figuring out the next 5 years. Second, these low-value tasks replace the heavy weight of actual ownership. And finally, all that constant motion, the running from meeting to meeting, it creates this powerful illusion of importance, even if nothing important is really getting done.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. A full calendar is not some badge of honor. More often than not, it's a sign that your time is no longer your own. You've essentially become a resource in someone else's plan. And that idea, the idea of reclaiming control, well, that leads us directly to our second signal. Okay, so if busyness is the trap, what's the escape route? That brings us to our second signal. Output beats effort. This is all about understanding the physics of results. It's realizing that the world does not reward you for effort, it rewards you for output.
In the context of our work, leverage is the ultimate force multiplier. It's what lets a single hour of deep, focused thought, or one critical decision, or one clever piece of automation generate more value than 100 hours of grinding it out on manual, repetitive tasks. It's about multiplying your force, not just applying more of it. This chart shows that asymmetry perfectly. It's a fundamental truth. Not all actions are created equal, not even close. You could do 100 low-leverage things, clear out your inbox, attend a bunch of status meetings, and generate, say, 10 units of value. Or you could perform one single high-leverage action, like launching a new product or automating a system, and generate 100 units of value. The effort is completely disconnected from the output.
So, the people who get this, the high performers, they operate differently. They don't just work harder, they actively hunt for leverage. They figure out their few, highest impact hours in a day, and they protect them like a fortress. They're constantly scanning for actions with what's called asymmetric upside. Small effort, massive potential reward. Their goal is entirely different. It's not to work more, it's to make their time work harder for them.
I love this way of thinking about it. Time is the currency we all get to spend. But leverage is the power that determines what that currency is worth. The whole game isn't about getting more time. It's about making the time you have more powerful. But that begs a pretty big question, right? If this is so obviously true, why do so many of us get stuck in the busyness trap? And that brings us to our third signal.
This signal explains the why. This is all about the internal psychology.
It's about why being busy feels so good, so productive, even when it's taking us absolutely nowhere.
It really starts with a classic idea you've probably heard of, Parkinson's Law. Simply put, work expands to fill the time you give it. If you give a task a week, it will magically take a week. Give that exact same task one day, and somehow it gets done in a day. We naturally fill whatever container we're given, and that creates this constant, low-level state of busyness without any real pressure to be truly effective.
But there's a much deeper, more biological reason this happens. Our brains are literally wired to seek rewards, and they love a sense of completion. So when you check off a small to-do item or you fire off a quick email, you get a tiny little hit of dopamine. It's a chemical reward that says, hey, good job, you did something. And this creates a dangerous feedback loop. We feel good doing the small, easy stuff, so we keep doing more of it. And in the process, the really meaningful, difficult, high-leverage work gets pushed to the side because it just doesn't offer that same instant gratification.
And this creates this huge disconnect between two states of being. On the left, you have what feels productive, hitting inbox 0, showing up to every meeting, always being in motion. It feels great. But on the right, you have what is actually effective, making one hard decision that sets a new course, shipping that one key project, or creating strategic clarity where there was chaos. One feels good in the moment, the other creates value long into the future.
Okay, so let's start to pull this all together. When you combine these three signals, busyness as camouflage, output beating effort, and motion feeling like progress, you start to see a great divide. They create two totally different paths, two different ways of operating in the world with two vastly different outcomes.
Just look at this breakdown. For the overwhelmed, time is just a resource to be filled up. For the leveraged, it's a resource to be multiplied. For the overwhelmed, focus is scattered like a shotgun blast across dozens of tasks. For the leveraged, it's concentrated like a laser on a vital few. Energy is either drained by constant motion or it's invested in high-leverage acts. And maybe most importantly, power is either given away to everyone else's agenda or it's held and directed with incredible intention. These aren't just slightly different habits. They are fundamentally different realities.
And the cost of ignoring these signals, of staying on the overwhelmed side of the divide, is just massive. You end up perpetually behind, always feeling overwhelmed. Your most valuable contributions, your best ideas, they never even see the light of day because they're buried under an avalanche of trivialities. And here's the ultimate danger. You risk becoming skilled and very busy, and in the end, totally replaceable. Just a cog in a machine instead of the one designing.
So all of this brings us to our final section, the mirror. Because after exploring all these signals out in the world, the final and most important step is to turn that lens back on ourselves. This isn't about judging, it's just about decoding our own patterns. So I'm going to leave you with 3 questions to think about. First, really take an honest look at your last week, or even just today. Where are you simply in motion, but not actually making progress? Where are you confusing the feeling of activity with the reality of achievement?
Second, and this is probably the most important question of all, when you look back at the last year, what were the 1 or 2 things that really moved the needle? The things that created genuine, lasting value in your work or your life? And how much of your time today is actually dedicated to finding the next one of those?
And finally, the gut check question. What are you doing right now simply for that little dopamine hit of completion? What task are you using as camouflage to avoid the real, important, maybe even scary work? The answer to that question reveals everything about who's really in control of your time. Is it you? Or is it the illusion of being busy?